Oh wow. I'm starving. Starving. Is this normal here in Germany? It's a little past 6:30. I'm about to head to Nuremberg to take my glucose drink to see if I have gestational diabetes. Now, this has already been a much different experience than it was when I was first pregnant with Willa back in the States. But I don't have time to share that right now. I'm gonna drive to Nuremberg and get back with you on how that experience is. That's not the only difference I'm gonna be talking about. We're gonna be talking about some of the main huge ones that actually kind of blow my mind. Prenatal vitamins. That was super shocking to me as a registered dietitian. Of course, we're gonna throw in some other differences. So hold tight, this video is bound to be quite interesting. I did not realize how different it was going to be. My gynecologist hadn't even asked me what my birth plan was all the way up until I was 27 weeks pregnant. The Mutterpass. In the States, you only have one big in-depth ultrasound, changing rooms. And lastly, let's talk about maternity paid time off. Okay, you guys, we need to chat. I knew that things were already different based on the timing of this appointment in order to get the gestational diabetes test taken care of, but I did not realize how different it was going to be. Here in Germany, I had to have a morning appointment. To be exact, it was at like 8:15 a.m. and they told me that I couldn't eat or drink anything prior to this appointment. As you saw this morning, I was really hungry. Not to be dramatic, because for a lot of people, waiting until 8:15 to get some sort of liquid is not a big deal. But for me, I'm a morning person and I love my breakfast and I'm used to eating it earlier. Not only that, but I feel like it's kind of a big ask for a pregnant woman just because our metabolisms are going. So I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm hungry. But because we don't live in Nuremberg, I had to drive. So of course I had to wake up earlier than most probably do to take this glucose test. There is quite a major difference because compared to the States, or at least my experience in Utah, I was actually able to take my glucose drink home with me. So basically I had to drink it within like an hour or two before going to the doctor's appointment, where then they did the blood work and tested, you know, my blood sugar levels. Here in Germany, I had to go in the birth center and physically drink it in front of them and wait there for 2 hours for them to run not only one, but 2 different blood tests. So that's another difference, is in the States, they just did my blood work once. Here, they've done it at the hour mark and then at the 2-hour mark to see how my blood sugars are each time. But oh my gosh, above anything else, the biggest difference is the drink itself. Back in the States, it's like a sugar drink. Like it's almost like pop, but not carbonated. That's what I was expecting, with some sort of like flavor to go with it. No. Here it was literally in like a mug, like a ceramic mug, and water and then table sugar just like mixed in. In my drink, at least, there was like probably like a half a teaspoon of sugar at the bottom, and it was hard for me to drink. A lot of Americans complain about the glucose drink, but I feel like compared to this, like it is nothing. I didn't enjoy drinking a drink with that much sugar in it back in the States, but I was having a hard time downing this drink. I even had like a black floaty in my cup. I hate to say that, but I was like, I can't drink this drink anyways, and there's like this black floaty in there, but I'm not gonna complain to them. It was an experience, to say the least. Happy it's over with. My blood sugars have looked fine. I know that this is a test that I could have opted out of. In fact, my midwife told me, like, you don't have to take that test. Like, you can opt out of it. Once I had my midwife telling me, like, it's your choice, and then my doctor was like, it's highly encouraged, like, you should do it. I thought about opting out of it. Here we are with me knowing my blood sugars are fine. I wish I would have, but I mean, I've gained a good experience. I can better relate to people who have to go through it, and now I have for sure clarity that I don't have to worry about gestational diabetes.
All right, we're gonna come back to Risa explaining about her adjustment to prenatal care here in Germany, but first, a quick word from today's show sponsor, Blinkist. Blinkist is one of my favorite apps to use when it comes to reading. It enables me to understand the most important points from over 5,500 nonfiction books and podcasts in just 15 minutes. A new feature I love is Blinkist Connect, which allows you to share your premium account with someone else for no additional cost. That's 2 for the price of 1. As parents to an energetic toddler and soon to be newborn, we are constantly sharing quotes and thoughts related to parenting. Blinkist Connect allows Risa and I to share our favorite reads or podcasts in just a few clicks. Blinkist is a great tool to help you become who you want to be in 2023. This year, I'm using Blinkist to help me find content that will help me become a better parent, a smarter communicator, and a savvier investor. One Blink I recently finished is called Pause. It focuses on mindfulness and reflective living. I was reminded that taking a break or a pause in today's fast-paced world can be an invaluable moment of reflection, growth, and reassessment. Click on the link below to start your 7-day free trial and get 25% off an annual premium membership. All right, let's take it back to you, Riz.
Look at this, you guys. Crazy. I am 2 days away from being 32 weeks pregnant and time is flying by. I actually really love being pregnant, so I'm just trying to savor it all because I know I'm gonna miss this. To me, one of the most surprising differences is that my gynecologist hadn't even asked me what my birth plan was all the way up until I was 27 weeks pregnant. I found this really interesting. I guess I assumed at that first appointment or within some of the first few appointments, I would be asked what my birth plan was, probably even given some advice on it, but that never happened. Although going in, I knew that this gynecologist wouldn't be delivering my baby, especially because she works at this prenatal clinic, but still, I was just surprised that I was never asked about it. This topic also leads me to another thing that's been very different based on my experience here in Germany compared to in the States. So in the States, it's really common for a person to choose an OBGYN, gynecologist, or midwife that they will be with for the whole entire duration of their pregnancy and also for the birth. From what I've heard from many of you German mothers, you've also said that's what your experience is like, is that you go to the gynecologist, you work with them, and then oftentimes they are the one delivering your baby. So really it might not be that different, but compared to my experience, it definitely has been. And I've got to say, there's a lot of women who go to the same prenatal clinic as me, and I'm assuming that their gynecologists aren't delivering their baby. So although this is specific to my experience, there's also a lot of other German women who are doing the same thing as me. And when I think back in the States, I don't know of a clinic where people go there for just prenatal care and then they know that their birth is going to be an entirely different doctor. I'm sure that there are exceptions to this, but still pretty interesting and worth mentioning. The Mutterpass. So in the States, women do not have a book or anything like this. All of their records and charts are stored online. So you can set up a profile to go and have access to this, but you don't physically have access to it unless if you print it out, and there's definitely not a book that women take to their appointments. The one pro that I can think about to not having one is that you don't have to worry about forgetting it or carrying it around. But really, that's the only pro I can think about. I've come to really love the Mutterpass. For me, I work with 2 different gynecologists and 1 midwife at this point, and so it's been really convenient to have all of my information stored in one book that I can take to the different healthcare professionals and they can add to it, look at it, just kind of see the status of my pregnancy. Very beneficial. It's also really empowering for me to just know where I'm at in my pregnancy and what my health data is like. My iron levels, my weight. I can also see the ultrasound data that they've recorded for baby. So that's really cool for me, where I can just see the growth of the baby and in those in-depth ultrasounds, see how babies change and adjusted and what baby's measuring at. Really cool and just empowering. Again, of course, I could go online in the States and be able to have access to all of this data as well. It's just not as convenient. And if I was working with multiple other healthcare professionals, they'd have to request access to my files, and oftentimes that comes with additional paperwork and just an added hassle to do that. Like I mentioned, I work with 2 gynecologists, and at first I don't even think I realized that I had 2 gynecologists working with me, and it was quite surprising when I found out I did. So let me clarify. I have 1 main gynecologist who I meet with for every prenatal visit. This doctor does an ultrasound every time we meet, although it's a much smaller machine, it's not as invasive. It was like that first appointment where she heard baby's heartbeat, we got to look at baby and see it on the screen, but it wasn't anything super in-depth or long. In fact, in past videos, we've talked about how brief we even get to hear baby's heartbeat for it.
Okay, it's a nice sound.
So it's a really quick ultrasound, but it's nice at this point with how far along I am. She's looking at my cervix with the ultrasound and a couple other things like that. This doctor is also performing a cervical exam and recommending certain vaccines for me and making sure I'm getting the proper blood work done. So my experience with this doctor would be very similar to what it would be like in the States. Basically, you work with one medical professional and that's who you work with as your point of reference for the whole pregnancy. However, like I said, I have been working with 2 of them. This didn't start until I went into my first in-depth ultrasound at 13 weeks. For me, I went in thinking that it was probably based on random that I got put with this gynecologist. And I think the reason for that is because in the States, you only have one big in-depth ultrasound. Of course, there's probably exceptions depending on the insurance or what you want to pay extra for. But here in Germany, with our private insurance, we have access to a lot of in-depth ultrasounds. The first one being at 13 weeks, like I mentioned, and that appointment has been my favorite one. For one, that's where we got to find out the gender of the baby, but for 2, it's just so cool for me to know that they're providing this in-depth ultrasound at a stage where baby's still really young and developing. A lot of the organs are forming, but if they catch anything in time, there's still time to be able to possibly do surgery or help prevent further abnormalities. So for me, it makes complete sense that they're doing this at 13 weeks, and it's also just super cool that the technology is at such where they can see baby at this stage. So let me look in here in this book. Like I said, I have the ultrasounds and I got that done, around 12, 13 weeks, and then again at the 20-week appointment. And that's where it happens in the States, is at the 20-week appointment. I went and got another in-depth ultrasound around my 25 weeks. I also just recently had one at my last appointment where I was 31 weeks pregnant. I know at this point I'll be meeting with that same doctor, having an ultrasound again in 4 weeks, although he says it's going to be really short, really brief. We know that baby's organs are developing as they should, and so at this point it's just going in to look at the amniotic fluid and see how everything is lining up as we prepare for birth. To be honest, I've appreciated working with 2 different doctors, and it's been cool to get his feedback and his specialty and develop a relationship with him over time. I do have to say though that coming from the States to here, I was surprised at just how frequently these in-depth ultrasounds are given. Another thing to mention here is that in Germany, the midwives that I work with and the birth centers that I've gone to, they do not use ultrasounds. That was a little bit of a shock to me just because back in Utah when I was pregnant with Willa, I worked with a midwife. I actually worked with an OBGYN or gynecologist as well, and both of them used ultrasound. I'm sure that there are plenty of midwives in the States who also don't use ultrasounds, because if you watched our very first experience with prenatal care here in Germany, we were expecting to be able to listen to baby's heartbeat for the first time when we went into the birth center, and we weren't able to because they don't provide that. Changing rooms. They are so different than what I was used to back in the States. For one, these are just little short dressing rooms. Your head sticks out above them, which just feels a little weird. But for 2, it's also kind of an interesting concept to me because you go in and you get halfway undressed and then you walk out basically half naked to go to the chair in front of the doctor. So they almost don't seem needed in my opinion. Most German women I've talked to or that have commented on our previous videos mentioned that it would be a good idea to wear a dress to just avoid the awkwardness of like walking out and getting to the chair. You feel like you're more covered and it's something that makes a lot of women feel more comfortable in. I think that's a really great idea. I do have to say though, in my experience, because I've had such frequent in-depth ultrasounds, they're oftentimes on the same day. So if I was to wear a dress for like my cervical exam, then it would be really, really awkward to be in that dress where they're doing it on my tummy. You know, of course, in this scenario, you could bring an extra change of clothes, maybe wear leggings underneath and just pull the dress up for the in-depth ultrasound. I don't know. There's a lot of solutions and none of it is a big deal. It's just interesting the difference of changing rooms and what to wear in these situations. Back in the States, you change out of your clothes and they put you in like a medical robe. Okay, next I want to talk about prenatals. And this is super interesting to me as a registered dietitian, and I wanted to talk about it. Before conception, I went into the pharmacy here in Germany, the Apotheke, and I asked the pharmacist what prenatals they would recommend for me as I wanted to become pregnant soon. What they gave me was this prenatal supplement called Folio. And this Folio brand is actually made here in Germany, so that's pretty cool. You don't have to have a prescription for it. So whether you go into an Apotheke or an online pharmacy, you don't have to have a prescription. That's really nice. Folio prenatals are broken up into a phase 1 pill and a phase 2 pill. You can see here this one is a phase 2 pill because I'm far enough along in my pregnancy that this is what is recommended. But the phase 1 pill is to be taken about a month, in my opinion. I say 2 to 3 months prior to conception, just to make sure that all of those nutrient stores are filled and as adequate as they should be. And then it's taken all the way up until the 12th week of pregnancy. At your 13th week of pregnancy, then you'd switch to phase 2. What's really interesting to me is the ingredients here in these prenatals. There are only 4 main ingredients in these prenatals. That's already super different than what you're gonna find in America. In these prenatals, you have folate, iodine, vitamin D3, and vitamin B12. And the difference between the phase 1 and the phase 2 is the amount of folic acid within these prenatals. It's like double the amount, 800 micrograms in the phase 1, because it's really needed in those first couple weeks and months of pregnancy. As a pregnant woman, I've tried these prenatals and I really like how small they are. They're really easy to swallow, and not to mention it's super nice that you only have to take 1 pill per day. Now, as a registered dietitian, I have a lot of thoughts about this topic. This topic in general, I mean, supplements are such a hot topic in the USA, and I have my own opinion on it, but it's just so interesting to see the difference in how few of ingredients there are in this prenatal compared to almost any other prenatal you will find in the States. Now, let me mention that on the Folio website, it does say that there's, of course, a couple filler ingredients. So they're not entirely the exception when it comes to fillers and added ingredients, but still, I would say that list is quite short. Now, I don't want to go too in depth about this. The main thing I want to point out is just how different that experience would be. If you went to a pharmacy in Utah, they would recommend a prenatal that you can just buy on the shelf in front of the pharmacy that's open to anyone. You don't need a prescription, just like you don't need one for this prenatal. But if you flipped it over, you would see far more things on that list. That's the main thing I want to point out. But because I am a registered dietitian, I have to say that there are a couple other nutrients that I definitely look for in a prenatal vitamin. One of them being choline. The needs for choline in pregnant women are quite high, that it's fairly difficult for most women to get adequate choline through food alone. So that's something that I would recommend most women get in their prenatal vitamin. Also, a prenatal DHA or omega-3 is going to be really beneficial in my opinion, especially if you're not eating fatty fish at least 2 to 3 times a week. If you are, then you don't need it. But I would say a lot of the people that I know aren't consuming that high of amounts of fish in their diet. Magnesium is another nutrient that tends to aid in nausea anyways, so it's helpful for most pregnant women, but especially for the women who are at a higher risk for gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, or high blood pressure. Magnesium would be really beneficial to be included in a prenatal supplement. Selenium and vitamin K are other ones that I think worth mentioning that I oftentimes look for in a prenatal. As you can see, I do think that there are other nutrients that are really important to have in a prenatal supplement, or at least to know about. In my opinion though, food is always preferred over any supplement. I definitely think diet should be top priority when trying to fit in all of the nutrient needs, but depending on people's food preferences, it's just not always adequate, and I do think supplements can have their place. So, of course, in this one, the Folio doesn't have a lot of those other ones mentioned. However, when you go into a German pharmacy, or if you look online, for example, even like Amazon.de, I saw a lot of other prenatal recommendations. I didn't look at them in depth, but even just looking at their picture, I could see that a lot of the other ones had the DHA included, or other vitamins and minerals that I've mentioned. So although Folio might be the main prenatal vitamin recommended by pharmacists, it's not the only one. And I guess that's a good question and something I want to know about. If you're a German mother, or you know of someone who is, were they recommended the Folio? Is that the one that they took? Is this kind of the standard one that all pharmacists are recommending for pregnancy? Like I mentioned, I think food is superior, so I also think it's pretty cool that the Folio ingredient list is quite short, especially because each of us is so different and our nutrient needs vary greatly. So if it's getting the core ones, then you can always add and build on that, especially because the prenatals back in the States, they aren't regulated. That is a really controversial topic, and in my opinion, I definitely think they should be regulated for safety. However, they're not. And so in my opinion, I always encourage a pregnant woman woman who wants to take a prenatal vitamin in the States to look for one that has been third-party tested for its safety, for its accuracy, and just make sure what they think they're purchasing is what they're actually getting. That's another question I want to throw out and ask for you guys. Are supplements here in Germany regulated, and who is doing that? I also have to say, if folio is the main one recommended by pharmacists, I do think that's pretty cool because in the States, there are so many different kinds of prenatal vitamins that it gets really confusing as a pregnant woman to stand in front of the supplement aisle and just decide what prenatal is going to be optimal for her and her baby. Prenatal vitamins are not created equal, and so I definitely think there's ones that are better and best. Knowledge is power in that fact, and I wish that there was more guidelines on what prenatal vitamins would be optimal for women to take. For me and this pregnancy, I'm taking the Thorne basic prenatal one, and then I also add a prenatal DHA on top of that, and then I know this seems like a lot, I'm taking choline. So again, quite a shocking difference between prenatal vitamins here in Germany compared to the States. I'll let you guys determine what you think is best and right for you. And lastly, let's talk about maternity paid time off. Although this doesn't really pertain to me, I find the differences quite staggering. Here in Germany, women get far more paid time off than in the States. They are doing it right, and the US has a lot to learn. If you become pregnant here in Germany, you are entitled to 14 weeks maternity leave. Broken up, this would be at least 6 weeks before birth and 8 weeks after childbirth. How freaking cool is that? Not only that, but you're entitled to 18 weeks of paid maternity leave if you have a premature birth, multiple births, or if your child is found to have a disability. I know that there's a lot more information regarding this online, but like I said, this doesn't really pertain to me, so I'm not gonna pretend like I'm the expert and I've looked up everything with it. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below if you want to share more details regarding this. In the States, a woman's paid maternity leave often is dependent on who she's employed by. It's going to vary greatly depending on that factor. The US does not have national standards on paid maternity leave. The US does, however, offer 12 weeks of unpaid maternity or parental leave. However, I would say that most people aren't actually taking full advantage of the 12 weeks because they want to make up for the money that they're losing by not going into work. Honestly, really discouraging if you live in the US and you're pregnant. It's just really unfortunate that there's not a national standard and that paid maternity leave for a lot of companies is just not where it should be. Tanner and I are actually feeling very lucky for the amount of paid time off that he's going to be receiving with this baby. With Willa, he did not get any paternity leave whatsoever. He had to use sick leave for the days that he wanted to take off, and so he used a couple of days in that first week when Willa was born, and then after that, he was back at work full time. It was quite the adjustment, not going to lie. This time, he will get 12 weeks of paid paternity leave. So we are very, very grateful for that, and we're looking forward to having Tanner home, being with our little family, soaking in these precious newborn moments. Not to mention, we're also gonna squeeze in some travel with this time as well. We actually have some really, really exciting travel plans. We are hoping to go to Norway and Sweden and Denmark and do a really fun road trip through those countries. And actually, I wanted to put a plug in here. If anyone has a motorhome that they'd be willing to rent for us for a month, we're looking for about 5 weeks on the road. That would be really awesome. Or if they would recommend a specific company online that they would rent from, let us know, because we definitely think doing it in a motorhome would be the best way to travel. However, we're not gonna lie, we're definitely considering tent camping because, gosh, those Scandinavian countries are expensive. So give us all of your best tips and tricks below on how to do this road trip. We are really excited to make it up north. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting. There was a lot of questions that I asked you guys, so be sure to put those below in the comments. And just overall, thank you guys for being here. It really means a lot. We can't believe we're so far in this pregnancy journey, and we just have loved sharing it with you guys. If you haven't already, hit that like button or the subscribe button. Please do so. That means so much to us. We'll see you guys in the next video.